Okay, so the Gemara returns to its presentation begun at the beginning of this chapter, the remedies to various conditions. The discussion is arranged according to parts of the body from the head downward. So this is called the refuos, the different cures and remedies that the Gemara offers if a person has different illnesses. So we're 153 in Gittin.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, no, I was wondering where. Right from the gotcha.
Right from the top.
Okay, got it.
So the Gemara says, for example, for ledama deresha, for blood of the head, that is a headache. A person has a headache induced by a blood-related issue. So what should a person bring? What should he use? Bring boxwood. This is also used as erez. A lot of times we speak about arazim, like cedar trees.
Yeah,
Boxwood.
There's a worm epidemic right now, a caterpillar.
Mm-hmm.
It's invading boxwoods.
Interesting.
It can kill your boxwood in 2 days.
Wow, just from this worm, from this caterpillar?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
I got a dead one outside my place.
I heard in school, in school tomorrow, they're going to be releasing a caterpillar that turned into a butterfly. So,
Oh,
yeah, they do that in the school.
that's cool.
Yeah,
It's in out of its chrysalis.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that they're going to make a whole thing tomorrow. I remember when I was at school, they did it also. They made like a whole thing about it. So if a person has this headache, and it calls it dama deresha, that's connected to blood, a blood-related issue. So you should bring boxwood, willow, this is, we know, the aravas, right? Then fresh myrtle, that's the hadassim. So a little bit connected to sukkahs over here. Then we have olive, poplar, cloves, and yabla. We don't really know what yabla is. Rashi says that it's
An herb.
it's an herb, and boil them together. Then pour 300 cups of this mixture on one side of the head, and that's a lot, right? 300 cups of the mixture on one side of the head, and 300 cups of it on the other side of the head. So you're making a lot of this stuff.
Is a cup 8 ounces?
It doesn't say the shear, it doesn't say how big the cup is, it just says cups. They mention here on the bottom, the number 300 is often used by the Gemara to denote an exaggerated figure. So sometimes it doesn't mean exactly 300, it means like a large amount, a lot. An alternative remedy, if not, that is, if it's impractical or ineffective, bring a white rose whose leaves all stand in one row. That is, all the leaves are on one side of the stem. Boil it and pour 60 cups of the resulting liquid on one side of the head and 60 cups on the other side of the head. So, you ever tried this out for a headache?
No.
Another head ailment. This is called litzlichsa. The first time it was talking about dama deresha, blood in the head. This is a migraine headache. Rashi calls it a pain of the half of the head.
Yeah.
The word migraine comes from the Latin hemicrania, which literally means half of the head. Huh. So that's interesting. So what should you do? Bring a wild cock and slaughter it with a sharpened zuz coin. So you're slaughtering this wild cock with a coin, with a sharp zuz coin of pure silver over the side of the person's head that aches, so that the cock's blood trickles down on that side of his head. So you're making the blood trickle down on your head. However, one must be aware that the blood not blind his eyes. Then hang the slaughtered cock on the doorposts of the patient's house, so that when he enters, he brushes against it, and when he exits, he brushes against it. So, very...
Make this stuff up?
What?
Yeah, make that stuff up.
Yeah. So basically, for the next few pages, this is going to be different cures and remedies that the Gemara is bringing. And the question is, first of all, could we try this out today? And where do these stuff come from? Is this like part of Torah? Did it come from Har Sinai? Where do all these remedies come from? Why is the Gemara telling us
And
this?
did they actually use it, the way it's written?
Right.
Or is it,
So let's look at footnote 28, back on page 153, and they discuss in general the cures and remedies of the Gemara. 28. The Rishonim write that these therapies may not work in our times because changes have occurred in the state of nature since the Talmudic era. This is called in Hebrew nishtanu hativim. Things are different. The nature of people, the nature of things are different. Skip the brackets, or because it's hard to know exactly what the Gemara means. For example, many of the various herbs cannot be accurately identified, or the therapies may have been recommended for use only in certain climates. So let's say yabla, we don't even know what yabla is, so if you're missing that herb, you don't know that it's going to work. Right?
Yeah, what is Yahweh?
yeah.
Let's skip the brackets again. Some say that it is even forbidden to try using these therapies nowadays, as one who finds a remedy ineffective for one of the aforementioned reasons may come to belittle the words of the sages. So you shouldn't try it out because you're going to say, oh, the Gemara wasn't correct or was. Furthermore, there's also a risk that nowadays these therapies may even be harmful. If you try pouring 300 cups on your head, that might give you a headache. The Gemara in Brachos and Psachim relates that Chizkiyahu, king of Yehuda, hid the book of remedies, which contains instructions regarding the healing properties of every type of herb and grass, and that the sages praised him for doing so. So it says that Chizkiyahu had this book, the book of remedies. It had the remedy for every type of sickness. And Chizkiyahu, the king, hid it. Rashi explains that Chizkiyahu wanted people to pray to Hashem rather than rely only on the therapies in the book. So that's why he was praised for hiding it away, so people shouldn't rely on all these therapies. Hence the question arises, why did Ravina and Rav Ashi, who compiled the Gemara, record the many remedies that appear here and in other places? If we find that Chizkiyahu is hiding them, so why over here are we recording all these remedies? The answer is that it is certainly permissible to use medical treatments and study them. However, Chizkiyahu was concerned that some lesser people will replace their faith in Hashem with trust in medicine. Therefore, he hid the book of remedies and relied on those capable of doing so to remember the remedies without having them written down. So Chizkiyahu, by hiding them, was not saying that we shouldn't use medicine. He was just saying that we shouldn't only rely on it. We have to rely on Hashem. But later, in the era of the Amoraim, just as they felt compelled to write down the oral law so it will not be forgotten, they wrote down the remedies for the same reason. So this is very interesting. It's comparing Torah Shebal Peh to these remedies. Just like we learned before, you're not supposed to write down the oral Torah. The only reason why they were allowed to is because people were forgetting. So too, people were forgetting these refuahs, these cures, and that's why they had to write them down. So they bring this from the Maharsha, and for some reason they missed out a very important part. I'm not sure why they didn't mention it. But in the back over here, let's see, what page is it? It's page Shin Mem, shame. Shin Mem. And it's on the side where it says the Maharsha. It's on the right commentary on this page. So on the top of the page it says Maharsha, right next to where it says Shem, Shin Mem. It's an abbreviation, Maharsha. So in that column, it's about 1, 2, 3. It's about like 8 lines from the bottom of the commentary. The line starts Mikol Adam.
In the
Maharsha.
Oh.
The line starts Mikol with a mem. 1, 2, 3.
Oh, yeah. Mikol Adam.
Mikol Adam. Yeah. Umitoch zetira, and he says, from all this you'll see, she'ein haTalmud chaser mikol hachachmas, that the Talmud is not missing anything from all the wisdoms, from all the knowledge that exists in the world. Kila kol chayli timtza bay refuah shlema, because for every sickness that there exists in the world, you can find a true and complete cure. Va'amitis lemevinim l'shoinam, to those who understand what the Gemara means. Va'al yomer hamalig, someone who wants to laugh and scoff over the Chachmi Talmud, shayu chaserim mechachmas harefuah. Don't think they didn't know medicine. Very interesting. This is what the Maharsha is saying. The reason why the Gemara is recording all of this is that we should know that the people of the Gemara, it's not just that they were knowledgeable in Torah. They knew every single chachma, every single knowledge that existed in the world. And that's why the Gemara is recording all this refuah, all these medicine, because Torah is complete. In Torah, everything is included.
What kind of script is this?
And it's called Rashi script.
Rashi script, yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to bring up that this is a strong point over here that they left it out in the English translation, but the Maharsha is saying that the reason why it's recorded is to show that the sages of the Talmud really knew everything. They knew medicine also. Now coming to Shavuos, actually, this is a very important question. We know that the Torah doesn't change. Everything in Torah, it's forever. It's not like Hashem commanded something and it changes. So how do we apply this to this Gemara? We just said that we shouldn't try this out at home, right? So how do we make sense of this?
Maharsha, is this before Rambam?
So Maharsha is later.
Later than Rambam.
Later than the Rambam.
So you can assume they knew about medicine.
Right, but the question is, we just learned in the footnote that a lot of rabbis said that we shouldn't be doing this these days, even though, let's say, it worked in the times of the Gemara, but we shouldn't be doing this. So that's saying, in other words, that a certain part of Torah is not applicable today. It's saying, so kind of, first of all, why should we be learning this? What's the point of learning it if we can't practice it right now? And does that mean that there's a change in Torah? Because it's kind of saying that this part of Torah we shouldn't be doing now. The question is even stronger. We know that the Rambam, he has a whole section where he speaks about medicine. We know that the Rambam was a doctor, and even about those laws, it's questionable if we should do the remedies of the Rambam these days. We know the Rambam is a book of halacha, which is not supposed to change. So how do we explain this idea that, from one hand, Torah doesn't change, and from one hand, we say that these things shouldn't be done today? So, one answer is given. The Rebbe actually asks this question, and he says that Torah has different dimensions to it. We study Torah and we understand it on a physical level, but everything in Torah is really studied on a much deeper level. The Torah comes from Shemayim. So all of these cures that we understand here on a physical level, like talking about a headache, could represent something spiritual on a whole different level. So in that sense, the Torah is eternal, because even though maybe we can't do these things practically, but the idea, the way it applies in a spiritual level, still applies today. So all of these things that we're learning over here about Yabla and this and that, they all represent deeper spiritual things. It's just, not all of us could understand what the deeper meaning to it. So that's how the Torah is still eternal, because on a deeper level, these things still exist. So that's an important thing to realize, that whenever we learn Torah, we're learning it on one level, but there's many layers and many levels to the Torah. So speaking about the Sefer HaRefuos, I found this very interesting about Chizkiah, King Chizkiah, and his book of remedies. So there's some copies over here. Yeah. So it's good to mention, today is a very special day actually. Beis Sivan, it's called Yom HaMeyuchas. the day of distinction. Today is the day where Hashem told the Jewish people, you are going to be Mamlechas Koyanim, a kingdom of Koyanim, of priests, V'goy Kodesh, and a holy nation. So this is when we became distinct, we became special, even before we got the Torah. This happened on Beis Sivan, the 2nd of Sivan. So this comes from a Mishnah in Psachim. It says, Shisha Dvarim Asa Chizkiyahu Melech Yehuda. There was 6 things that Chizkiyahu, King Yehuda, did. And Al Shloisha Haidulai, there were 3 things that the sages Maida, they admitted, they agreed, conceded to him. Al Shloisha Loi Haidulai. And on 3 of them they did not agree, did not concede to him. So what are these? Due to King Chizkiyahu's father's wickedness, he dragged the bones of his father Achaz on a wire of ropes and did not afford him the respect due to a king. So this is when his father passed away, instead of giving him an honorable burial, he dragged him on some ropes. And it looks like his father was a Rasha, so that's why he buried him that way. Another thing was, so the sages conceded with him that then he ground the copper snake that Moshe fashioned in the desert because Israel worshipped it, and the sages conceded to him. Yeah, we know the story when the snakes were biting the Jewish people, so Moshe made a copper snake. They should look up to it and then they will be healed. So it looks like the people still knew where this copper snake was, and they were using it as people were forgetting about Hashem. So he hid it. It says he ground it, kites. Well, he actually, crushed it. So the Chachamim also agreed to him. And he suppressed the book of cures, and they conceded to him. So this book obviously still exists, I guess, somewhere. It's just, it says it was hidden. So this they also agreed to him. And then there's 3 things that they did not concede. And with regard to 3 actions, the sages did not concede to him. He cut off the doors of the sanctuary and sent them to the king of Assyria, Ashur. And they did not concede to him because he thereby demeaned the temple. So I guess he wanted to give a gift or to find favor in the eyes of Melech Ashur, so he sent them this gift.
Gold,
What?
probably gold.
Yeah. Then another thing he did that the rabbis did not agree, he sealed the waters of the upper Gihon stream, diverting its water into the city by means of a tunnel, and they did not concede to him because he harmed the local populace in the process and should have relied upon Hashem. I think there was a story that the waters of Gihon were overflowing and he kind of channeled it into the city, but he was supposed to rely on Hashem. You have to check for the whole story. Another thing he did was he intercalated the year, delaying the advent of the month of Nisan during Nisan. And they did not concede to him. So this is talking about a leap year. He made an extra month, but he did it already on the 30th of Adar, which already could be Nisan technically, and that's too late to make a leap year, because you have to make a leap year before Adar comes. You can't make it after Adar is already over, so that's something that they did not agree to him. The point over here we're bringing is about the Sefer Refuos, about this book of cures that they brought. Now, we'll continue a few more pages in here. In this book, in this book right over here. So, on the next page, we have here something from the Rogachover. The Rogachover was Rabbi Yosef Rosen. He was a great genius. He knew the whole Torah back and forth. And this is in a footnote 27. Where it says, you see, the Zehav Sefer Refuos Madam Avor B'Psachim, the Zeh Gam Kein Have Misinai. He says that this book of cures comes from Sinai. This is a very powerful line. He's saying that it's not like rabbis came up with it later. He's saying that just like the 10 Commandments were given by Har Sinai, the Seres Adibros, this book of cures was also given by Har Sinai. Which means what we're learning now in the Gemara is no less than learning Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am Hashem your God. And when we're learning about what to do with a headache, it's also from Har Sinai. That's what the Rogachover says. And then he says elsewhere, Refuos Haniskarim beGemara, whenever the Gemara mentions remedies, Zegeder cheluk min ha-Torah. This is a part of the Torah. Shebal peh hamasr lanu beKabbalah, which is given over to us in tradition, passed on generations. Ube'emes zegeder sefer refuos asher mavur b'psachim. This is really what the book of cures are, that is said in Gemara Psachim. So what is
Where do we find this in Tzara and Mitzvah? Like is this related to Mitzvah?
the cures or remedies?
Yeah.
So that's what's so interesting, that it's not in the 5 books, right? It's found in the Gemara, but where did the Gemara get it? According to the Rogachover, this is given by Har Sinai, but it was oral. Just like most of the Torah, we have oral tradition. So these cures were given over orally, but it came from Har Sinai. It's not like it started later. And he's saying that what we're learning in our Gemara here, the different cures and remedies, that's really connected to the same book that that he was hiding. And I guess the Gemara, they knew about it, and they recorded it, because the way the Maharsha explained it, the history went that Chizkiah hid it because people were relying on this book. But what happened? We still need to know the cure. So the rabbis felt that it's going to be lost, so that's why they recorded it in the Gemara. But he's saying it's the same book that Chizkiah had, and that book, where did that come from? All the way from Har Sinai. And he finishes off, and this is very interesting, V'loi k'may shekasav Rambam. Not like the Rambam says in Psachim. We'll see soon. The Rambam is very, very sharp, and he has a whole different thing about these cures. We'll see soon. The Rambam used very, very strong language about this book of cures. So let's see this. And what's also interesting is that the Rogachover, we know, was a big student of the Rambam. He always, the Rambam was like his teacher. He would call him his Rebbe, even though he was much later than the Rambam. But over here, he's saying something different than the Rambam.
Yes, Reb Shmuel, we had an elder Yid from Russia, who, if I'm not mistaken, said he davened with the Rogachover.
Yeah? Wow.
So Shmuel has more details.
Very interesting.
And he said he davened very fast.
The Rogachover davened very fast? Well, to have someone to remember the Rogachover, that's... yeah. So, actually, another story about the Rogachover, connected to the Rambam, also a Buffalo connection. Rabbi Zuckerman, he would say this story. He said that he once heard that the Rogachover had a lot of sicknesses or suffering, at a certain point in his life. And he said that it could be the reason why he's suffering so much is because he was defending the Rambam too much against the other Mefarshim, against the other commentaries. But then he said, it's all worth it to vindicate the Rambam. So that's. But over here, it's interesting that he says something different than the Rambam. We'll see what's the discussion here. So let's first see Rashi's opinion. There's going to be 2 sides over here, but 2 very extreme sides, all about this book of cures. So Rashi says, "V'ganaz sefer refuos." Why did Chizkiah hide the book of cures? K'dechsiv ha'toiv beinecha asisi. It says something interesting. Later on, Chizkiah became sick, and he davened to Hashem to cure him, to make him feel better. Why? He said to Hashem, I did something good for you. What was the good thing that he did? The good thing that he did was that he hid the book of cures. That's why he was asking that Hashem should cure him in that merit, in that schus. And what's the big schus? When someone would become sick, they would not give themselves over to Hashem and ask and daven. Elam misrapin miyad, they would get a cure right away. And now, this book of cures that Chizkiah had, where did it come from? So here we have a Ramban. The Ramban says, Ushloima HaMelech. Before we were talking about Shloimeh, Shenasan La'elikim HaChochma V'Hamada. We know that Shloimeh was the wisest of all men, and he knew all the different knowledges and sciences. Umimena Lamad Atsoif Kol HaToldos. In this book, Shloimeh Melech knew all the cures and all the medicine that's going to exist until end of days. Va'afilu koiches ha'isbim was golosim. Even the different grasses and their different segula, the different powers and potentials that they have, ad shekasa b'hem sefer refuos. So the Ramban is saying that this book that Chizkiah had traces all the way back to Shlomo HaMelech. And Shlomo HaMelech was the one who, wrote down all these cures, being that Shlomo was the wisest of all men. So before we were learning that he knew about demons, but he knew medicine also. And he says so strong that all the medicine that's going to exist, till this very day. V'chein kasav harashba. This is also what the Rashba writes. Sheshlomo HaMelech hu shekasav v'sefer harefuos. That it was Shlomo HaMelech that wrote this book of cures. Now we'll see the Rambam. The Rambam is going to go very, very hard against this. And this is the commentary of the Mishnayos to the Rambam on this Mishnah of Sefer Refuos. So the Rambam says it wasn't a book of medicine. Haya Sefer shaya inyanai lehisrapes b'dvarim shelo hitira Torah lehisrapes b'hem. This was a book of cures that the Torah does not allow you to use them as cures. So this was a forbidden book, according to the Rambam. Not a book written by Shlomo. He says this is a book of cures that you're not supposed to use. Kumaya devarim shechashu bali atzuris. These are like things that people... So tzuris is images. People that rely on it. No, it's close. The word it sounds similar, but it's tzuris is shapes and images. There are people that are astrologers and they understand the different stars. They make these different images to match the different shape of the stars. And this type of cures could help or harm for different things. In Greek, this is called talsum. I looked up what talsum is. Talsum is type of amulets that people use, that you write down different names and different things, kind of some hocus pocus things, and that brings a cure. And the Rambam says that's the book that Chizkiah hid away. It wasn't a book written by Shlomo HaMelech. The Rambam says this was some type of book, people using amulets, people relying on the stars. And this talsum would say that if you make this shape and this form, this is good for this sickness, from the different things that are confusing. So this is what the Rambam says. Now, if it works, why did Chizkiah hide it? Why did so the Rambam first of all says it wasn't Shlomo HaMelech. Talisman is wow. That's funny because it sounds like a talisman.
Yeah.
It's a magical charm or object believed to bring good luck or provide protection from harm or evil. Interesting. But you put in talisman or talsum?
No. I put in when you read talsum, I said, wait, that's very similar to the English word talisman.
You knew about this word before?
Yeah.
Yeah? Very interesting. Yeah.
Word games.
I hope they don't say that about someone, when you wear a talus, making a talisman. So the Rambam is saying this talsum thing, and he says that this book of cures was this type of amulet. Now, what was wrong with this? Why did Chizkiah hide this book? The next paragraph. Umechaber zeh hasefer, the author of this book, loy chibroi ela derech hachachma beteva hametzias. There's some books that you're just supposed to read, you're not supposed to practice. So this book that had these different cures, it was only made as a study, something that people wanted to research, to kind of see the different how different sciences work. Loy al derech sheyasa adam pu'ula mima shenichtav ba'isei sefer v'zeh muter. If you just read from it, that's allowed, but to act on it, that's a problem. And that's why Chizkiah hid it, because people were using it, and it's not supposed to be used. V'oid yisbar lecha, ki yesh dvarim shemana Hashem lasoisam ve'mutarim l'lamdam u'lavinam. And the Rambam says you should know that there are certain things that Hashem allowed us to study, but not to practice. For example, ki Hashem yisbarach amar lo'isumad lasais. We know there's different avodah zaras that you're not allowed to do the avodah zara. V'lamadnu b'kabbalah v'lat tulamid lavinu l'hayres. There's a whole masachta avodah zara, right? So how do the rabbis know how to judge a person that's serving avodah zara? They have to study the different avodah zaras. How do they really know if you're actually serving that avodah zara? Right, Reuven, you learned masachta avodah zara probably.
Yeah.
So I'm saying,
I was
right.
But yeah.
So over there, it discusses all different types of idol worship. But how do the rabbis know about these idol worship? It must be that you could study it, but obviously you can't practice it. So the Rambam is comparing this, and he's saying that this book of cures is the same idea. When people were acting immorally, they were actually using this book as a cure. He hid them, and people shouldn't be using this book. So that's take number one of the Rambam, what this book was. He says it wasn't a book from Shlomo HaMelech that had real cures. The Rambam says this was not given by Har Sinai. This is a book of amulets connected to the talsum or the talisman. Now the Rambam goes with a different approach. V'ulai, this is take number two. Shahaya Sefer v'yasham refuah lasam hamavis. That this was actually a book that had it had refuah for poison. It would say how a person could heal themselves from things that could kill a person, like poison. That if you use this type of poison in this way, so, this is a very dangerous book if it's telling you how to treat poison, but it's also telling you which things are poisonous. And basically people were using it in the wrong way. Instead of using it to cure people, they could also use it to kill people. And it would tell you that if a person had poison, then you could take this medicine or whatever. And they would use certain things to go against this poison and to save him from death. And when people were acting very corrupt and they were killing people using these drugs and medicine, that's when he hid it. So this is the second approach that the Rambam has. The first one was that it was a book of amulets, and it wasn't good because you're not supposed to practice it. The second thing, what the Rambam is saying here, that it was actually contained information about poison, and that's why it was hidden. There's actually some stories that they say about the Rambam and poison. They say that there was a whole thing, he had to compete with another physician. They would kind of see who's a better physician between him and the Rambam, and they said that each one would have to drink the other person's poison and to be able to cure himself from that.
Wow.
And there's a whole story how they switched the medicines, and the Rambam switched it was a whole thing, but basically, to deal with poison, you really have to know what you're doing. So this book is not safe, so that's why he hid it, according to the Rambam.
He was an evil king?
Who?
Hezekiah.
No, he was a good king.
Judah's king.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it says that the rabbis praised him for hiding this book of cures.
Censored the book.
He hid it.
Yeah.
He put it away, right? So what was this book? So this is where we have this discussion. So Rashi says it was a good book. It was a book from Shlomo HaMelech. The only problem was that people were relying on it and not on Hashem. The Rambam says it wasn't a good book. First of all, the first approach is that it was just a book of amulets, people that were relying on astrology and all these things. And the second thing, Rambam says that maybe it was a book that contained information about poison, and that's why he hid it. Now, the Rambam says, why am I speaking so much about this? Vanihir beisi lecha dvarei bezeho inyan. And I am expounding on this, lefisha shamaiti, because I heard because I heard some rabbis saying ki shloima chiver sefer refuos, that it was really Shlomo that composed this book. Kishiyach l'shem adam, when a person is sick, ayikr nushum chaylim and achaylim. Haya miskavin la'isei sefer vaya isa kameshakasu b'sefer vaya misrapi. The Rambam is saying, I heard other commentaries saying that Shlomo Melech composed and was the author of this book. And when people were not relying on Hashem, that's when he removed it and stored it away. And now the Rambam comes with his attack on saying that it was Shlomo HaMelech. Va'ata, this is the last paragraph on this page. Va'ata shma hefsed zeh ha'maimer. Listen to how much of a problem and there's a fault in this. Umash yeshbei min hashig'onis. He says there's something crazy about this, like meshuga, shig'onis. It's ve'ech yichsu l'chizkiyo min ha'ivelas ma she'ein roi l'yachis k'maisei l'ru'ay amayin. Why would we attribute and give credit to Chizkiyo for doing something like this? U'k'maykein l'sayate shahidulai. The Rambam is against this. Basically, we know the Rambam was a doctor, right? Mm-hmm. And he's saying that if it was actually, this book was from Shlomo HaMelech, and it had, like real cures in medicine, the rabbis would not have been happy that he stored it away. That's why the Rambam is saying it must be that it wasn't a book by Shlomo, it was just some other type of cures. And the Rambam says like this, according to their mind, which is very light, and meshubash means that like your mind is a little bit, is they frazzled, or ha'adam kishayira v'yelich. If a person is hungry, it looks like we're missing some words, but basically the Rambam is saying, are you going to say that you should not eat bread because people are going to say, oh, the bread made me full and not Hashem? It's like, should we store all the bread because people are going to say, oh, I'm just alive because of the bread, not because of Hashem? So you don't store away bread, so you wouldn't store away a book of medicine. And the Rambam says, he says, listen, foolish people. Just like a person, when he eats, he thanks Hashem, he makes berkas hamazon, he thanks Hashem. And this will take away my hunger and I will live. So you thank Hashem for giving me a cure. So the Rambam is saying, the Rambam says it doesn't really make sense to me that people were relying on this and forgetting about Hashem. It's like, you go to a doctor, it doesn't mean that you don't believe in Hashem if you go to a doctor. So the Rambam was like very offended by this pshat to say that it was real medicine. That's why the Rambam goes out of his way to say that it was not a real medicine. The Rambam says, I would not even need to mention this if not that, this was getting around. People were publicizing this pirush that it was from Shlomo HaMelech. So the Rambam is saying very extreme in the opposite way, that the Rambam holds it was not from Shlomo HaMelech. Because if it was really from Shlomo and was good medicine, why would he be praised? Why would Chizkiah be praised? If you're worried about Hashem, he says, medicine is not a contradiction to belief in Hashem, just like eating is not. And that's what the Rambam is saying. So the Rambam went on a very strong attack, saying that this cannot be from Shlomo HaMelech. Very, very interesting. Even though the one who said this commentary was Rashi, the Rambam is saying his own opinion. And you see this opinion, going also in the Rambam and the laws of Avodah Zarah. The Torah says about a lot of things, don't do this, don't serve Avodah Zarah, or, don't rely on these type of people that tell you the future. So the question is there something to them, just the Torah is telling you we shouldn't do it, or they're actually false? You have people that are fortune tellers or whatever, do they have some substance? Are they a real thing? And the Torah is telling us just not to use it, or they're actually a waste of time. What do you think?
Certainly nowadays,
Nowadays, it's a waste of time, right? But what about in?
Business.
It's a business,
They're fortune tellers on Elmwood Avenue.
right?
There's a store that go out to Lilydale, the mediums and the mind readers.
Yeah. So the question is, is it just that, being a Jewish person, we shouldn't use that because the Torah said, but really, they might have some truth to them, or they actually have nothing to them.
It's in someone else's name. Yehovah ben Yehovah.
They use all types of things,
Yeah.
But
but
are they actually
right.
communicating and receiving information that other people cannot receive?
They talk to the dead too, we're not supposed to
Well,
do that.
Right.
They talk to them, yeah, but the dead answer back.
So that's the question is,
Proclaim to do that.
No, but that's the
Say
question.
yes and
They can
stuff.
say whatever they want. Is it true? You're not gonna make any money, by saying that I can't communicate,
Some people
if
will go by what
if
they,
that's what you're selling.
right, they predict things, they know, they look at things and.
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
So let's see what the Rambam says. So this is where he says like this: Hilchos Avodah Zarah. You see, it's Hilchos Ayin Zayin. He says, "Kol hamaymin bedvarim elu keitzavan." The Rambam says, whoever believes in any of these things or anything like these, umachashiv b'libay shein emes, and he thinks that they're really true. There is some truth to them. V'divrei chachma. They have some wisdom to it. Aval HaTorah asr oisan, but the Torah forbade them. Einei elo min haschalim u'mechusri adas. People that think like this, they themselves are missing das. Ubechlal hanashim vaktanim. The Rambam says these are like little kids or women she'ein daitan shlema, that their mind is not complete. Aval bali hachachma utmimi adas, but people that actually have chachma and complete in knowledge, yedu berayis beruris, they'll know with clear proof. Shakol elu advarim she'asra Torah, that all these things that the Torah forbade, einam divrei chachma, they're not wise at all. Ela tayu vehevel, they're nothingness, they're vanity. Shenimshechu ben chaseri yadas, people that are not smart follow them. V'nachu kol darkei emes beklolan, that's why they left all the ways of truth. Neza amra Torah k'shezira kol elu avolim tamim tia Hashem alikecha. And the Torah says, be true to Hashem, not because, you're missing something over there, it's because it's a waste of time. That's what the Rambam is saying. The Rambam is saying, don't even think for a second that there is something true to all these other things. And, this connects to what the Rambam was saying before, that the reason why King Chizkiah hid this book of Refuos is because this book of amulets was this type of thing. It wasn't a book of real medicine. It was a book of fake medicine, like these type of fortune tellers. So, how many opinions do we have so far about this book of Chizkiah? So, either it's from Shlomo HaMelech, right? Or it's a book that had just other things. Now we'll see that it goes even further back than Shlomo HaMelech. And this is from the Tashbeitz Katan. I haven't heard of this before. Tashbeitz was Reb Shimshon Bar Tzadok, and he was a Talmud of Maharam Mirutenberg. He was the rabbi that he was locked in a tower. They put him in, they wanted a big ransom for him. This is a famous story that the rabbi wouldn't allow them to ransom him because it would be a big, cost the Jewish people so much money, and then they would just do it again. So, it says that I think he passed away in the tower. But they allowed some of his students to come and visit him, and he would study with them. That was the name of this tower. And this student recorded what he studied with the Rabbi Meir of Rottenburg. Very interesting story. You could look it up. That this Rabbi Meir of Rottenburg, he was a very, very big Talmud Chacham, great rabbi. And, he did not let people to ransom him, to take him out of jail. But while he was there, he was allowed to study with some students. And this is what he wrote. Hadam Rinan Chizkiah gana Sefer Refuos v'haidulay. That Chizkiah hid this book. V'm timer mi'ayin balay Sefer Refuos. Where did Chizkiah get this book from? And here he goes further back than Shlomo Melech. He goes all the way to the times of Noach. V'yashleimar k'shehaya Noach b'teva haya imay shedin ruchin v'lilin. This goes back to our demons, right? So he says that in the Teva, Noach brought, it says, Mikol hachai, from all the things that are alive. It says he even brought demons to the Teva, not just from the animals. Now, you don't want to be too close to demons in a Teva. And according to this tradition, the demons were harming. We know that Shedim are mazikin. Ad shenasu rubam cholim. And he says that people were getting very sick in the Teva. You know, how long are they there besides for all being together with animals? Could you imagine living in a zoo for a whole year? And here he's living even with demons. There was also a terrible odor, terrible smell, stench in the Teva. Until one angel came. Look at the story. A malach came, picked up one of the sons of Noach, brought him to Gan Eden, and taught him all the cures. And those cures coming all the way from the times of Noach were written down in the book, and that was the book that Chizkiah had that he stored away. This is a very interesting tradition about where this book came from. It came from the times of Noach and the Teva, and what? Which son? I don't know. It doesn't say which son of Noach. I don't know. I would guess maybe Shin. He was the most righteous, the good one. That he took him to Gan Eden. So that's another source. Okay, so we have Shlomo Melech, we have Noach. Now it gets even better. Hayalkot Haruveni. This is another sefer. Hevi b'shem Sefer HaPliya. This is a book called Pliya. It's a wondrous book. Nikragam Sefer HaKana v'soides HaTorah. These are the secrets of the Torah. Shekibel Elkanah ben Tzuf Efrasi Eliyahu Hanavi. There was a person, his name was Elkanah, and he received these secrets from Eliyahu Hanavi. Shekasher Nivra Adam Harishain. Sameh HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'Gan Eden. That when Adam Rishon was created, Hashem placed him in Gan Eden. Yarad Malach v'limdei v'kasav lei Sefer. That a Malach came down and wrote a book for Adam Harishain. V'zhiroi al kol davar v'davar. And he warned Adam about every single thing. V'heralei Seder HaMazolis. He showed him all the constellations. V'sivavei. V'heralei Yishtal Shalos Olam. He showed him the whole chain of worlds. Shaloi nishar shum garin v'seir shaloi lamad. There was no seed and nothing that he did not learn, that he was not taught. V'hera der v'shayftav. Adam Rishon was shown all the generations and their leaders. Der v'chachamav. Every generation and their rabbis and their wise people. Leida inyan iyoi v'sibasai. V'hera lei evarin v'gidin. And Hashem showed a person's body and all the different parts of the body. V'chol ma shenivra begufay sibasay v'inyanai. And this is basically anatomy. He explained him every part of the person's body. Al oisei sefer nimtzu v'oisei sefer ayel Chizkiah Melech. So according to this pirush, it's even before Noach. This comes from Adam Harishain, that Hashem sent a malach to Adam Harishain to tell him, everything, all the medicine and all the cures. And that's the same book that Chizkiah had. So this is a very, very ancient book. Yeah, Adam.
Makes sense.
So,
Before they got kicked out?
Yeah, that's when this book was written. So this is the book that Chizkiah had. Is very, very ancient. According to this, it goes back to Adam Harishain, and according to the last one was from Noach and the Teva. And then Shlomo, and according to the Rambam, it's none of them. According to the Rambam, it's just some book from Talisman. It's a not good book. But you see here how strong the Rambam felt about medicine. The Rambam felt that it was wrong to say that Chizkiah would hide a book of good medicine. The Rambam says it would not be any contradiction to belief in Hashem. The Rambam says just like you eat you thank Hashem. For medicine, you thank Hashem. No reason to hide it. And now here's like the full story of Chizkiyahu HaMelech. So this is the Gemara b'Masechta Brachos. Aisekes b'chol yoy shel HaMelech Chizkiyahu u'v'nevuas Yeshaya Elov ki meis ata v'lo tichya. It says that Yeshaya, the prophet, he prophesied about Chizkiyahu that you will die and you're not going to live. That's the sickness. The Chizkiyahu mispalel alatzmai. Here is a very strong lesson about how important to daven is. Even if a prophet is saying that the person is not going to live, he was still davening. V'omer, and he told Hashem, Zachar na, please remember, es asher esalachti lefanecha, that I went before you, be'emes u'belev shalom, with truth and a good and complete heart. V'hatov be'einecha asisi, and I did something good in your eyes. So he was davening to Hashem that he should heal him from his cure because of the good things that he did. The Dereshas HaGemara, the Gemara expounds, Mai v'hatov be'einecha asisi, what are the two good things that he did? Amar Yehuda Amarav Shesamach Geula L'Tefillah. What was the merit that he did? That he juxtaposed, he said one right after the other, Geula L'Tefillah. We know before Shemoneh Esrei we say Goal Yisrael. Right? We say the bracha of redemption. And right after that we say Shemoneh Esrei. And it says you're not supposed to make an interruption. So what was the big merit that he had? He said, you know why Hashem, you should save me? Because I did Shemoneh Esrei right after saying the bracha of Goal Yisrael. Reb Levi Amar, and Reb Levi said, Shagana Sefer Refuos, because he hid his book of cures. So this is interesting. What do these two things have to do with each other? You know, why are these two things the merit that he's asking for in order to live? It's another interesting thing is that in Slichos, we say, there's a bunch of lists of Anenu. We say, just like Hashem answered Yonah, you know, when he was in the fish, answer us. Just like he answered Mordechai and Esther, answer us. One of the things we say is, the one who answered Chizkiah, king of Yehuda, when he was sick, please answer us. And this is the story here. And Hashem answered Chizkiah because of these two things. So it basically explains that the reason why hiding this book of cures was a reason for him to be spared is because just like, you know, people were not relying on Hashem and they were just relying on this book of cures. So he's saying to Hashem, you know, just like I made people turn to you, so I'm asking you that you should cure me. You know, it's kind of measure for measure. Just like he helped, just like he helped people pray to Hashem, so too you should lengthen my life. Tarich li eschaya. So this was all about this Sefer Refuos. But the point that we're trying to bring out over here is that even Refuos, you know, when you learn Gemara, sometimes you could say, you know, there's certain parts that seem more holy. And there's certain parts that seem, you know, kind of more mundane. But the truth is, no. You know, even Refuos, even the different cures that are taught in Gemara, it's totally different than if a person, you know, any doctor is just opening a medical book and reading from it. You know, when you're studying this, you're studying Torah. It's coming from Har Sinai. You know, it could be coming back all the way from Adam Harishon. So, you know, it's a whole different approach. When we learn this Gemara now, you know, we're not just learning anything, we're learning the refuos that come all the way from the Gemara. Now, what lesson could we learn from this whole thing about the blood in the head? And these different medicines? So, I printed this in the back, but it looks like we'll say it more outside because not so much time left. So, you know, like we said, everything in Torah has different dimensions. So we'll go a little bit to the Kabbalah part of this Gemara, the Kabbalah of the medicine. Ready for some Kabbalah? So we have over here blood that comes to the head. What could that represent? You know, where does the blood come from mainly?
Bird?
What?
You're talking about the bird's blood?
Within the person,
blood?
the human blood. Where's
It comes from the heart.
the heart, right? Now, the Gemara says we're talking about an illness that the blood is going to the head. What could that represent on a deeper level? So we know, like it says in Tanya, the brain has to control the heart. Moyach shalit ala lev. The mind's supposed to control the heart. What is this illness that we're addressing over here? The blood is coming to the head. Blood coming to the head means that instead of the mind controlling the heart is controlling the mind. The blood, the excitement is coming to your head and it's disturbing you from, doing what you're supposed to do. So what's the cure for that? So now we're learning the Gemara on a deeper level. It's not just we're talking about any headache. We're talking about a spiritual type of illness where the blood of the heart is coming up to the head and distracting him from controlling the heart. So if you count, how many things does the Gemara say to use, for this cure? Let's say it says you should bring, sure, if you count the amount of things, it said boxwood, willow, fresh myrtle, olive, poplar, cloves, and yabla. So that's 7. 7. What's 7? So what do we put on our head? Which mitzvah that we do on Tefillin? Tefillin is all about the mind controlling the heart. So what's the cure for a person that his heart is controlling his mind? You should put on Tefillin. On the Tefillin, there's 2 shins, right? If you notice, one shin has 3 heads and has 4. How much is that? 7. When the Gemara says these 7 things, according to Kabbalah, these 7 things connect to the 2 shins on the Tefillin. That's why it's 7 things. To make it more fascinating, what's the gematria of Shin?
80, 70?
It's at the end of the Aleph Beis, the second to last letter.
Oh, second to last.
So from Kuf, it's already
300.
300. So what did the Gemara say? How many cups should you pour on each side of the head?
300.
Why 300? Because of the 2 shins.
Oh,
The 2 shins of the Tefillin, that's why it's 300. Isn't that amazing?
yeah.
That's why the Gemara says we should put it on the 2 sides of the head.
So what is it saying
So-
every time we do the mitzvah? It's, I thought it was like you're connecting with God,
So we,
Torah, through your body and soul.
right, so one of the intentions that we have when we put on tefillin is that we're making our mind to be able to control the heart. So our Gemara is saying someone who doesn't have his mind is not controlling his heart, which means his blood is coming to his head. What should he do? He should put on tefillin. He should gain control. How do you gain control? By putting on the tefillin that has these 2 shins. This is obviously a deeper level of explanation of what the Gemara means, but it's then it goes further.
The tefillin has 2 shins on it?
Yeah, and that's what that connects to the Gemara 300 cups, and that's why the Gemara says you should put it on one side of the head and 300 cups on the other side of the head. Now the Gemara said, what if that doesn't work, right? What does the Gemara say? The Gemara says you should take a white rose, all stand in one row, boil it, and pour 60 cups. So what's that representing? So we know that there's the 2 tefillins. We put it on the head and on the hand, right? So in the head, there's 4 different compartments. But in the hand only has 1 compartment. So that could be what the Gemara is hinting to, that all stand in one row. That they're all together. In the Shel Yad, it's all together. In Kabbalah, there's something called the milui, which means every letter, there's the main part of the letter, and then there's the full letter. So, for example, the letter Shin, how would you spell the name, the letter? So,
S-H-I-N.
but in Hebrew, how would you write Shin Yud Nun? So either you could just write Shin, or you could write Shin Yud Nun. So those 2 letters, the Yud and the Nun, that's called the Miloi. That's called, the completion of the letter, the full letter. So the, Shin, we said, is gematria as 300. How much is the Yud and the Nun?
Yud is 11.
Yud is 10.
10, I got 10.
Yud is 10, and Nun is 50.
Okay. Okay, lemon, nun, yeah.
So Yud Nun
40,
is
50.
is so 60.
Oh, it's 60 cups.
60 cups, Reuben got it. So that's
Shin.
so basically according to Kabbalah, that's the two different things that the Gemara is referring to. The first option was, try the head tefillin. The 300, that's the shin, that's the 300 on each. The shel yad, if you look at it, there's no shin on it. Because that's the hidden part of the shin. That's the yud nun.
But you make a shin on your hand.
You see? So there is that shin there. Very good. So that's the hidden part of the shin. That's the yud nun. That's the 60 part. So that's kind of what the Gemara is saying, that, there's two cures to this problem. If a person is not controlling, his mind, so you got to put on the hand tefillin and the head tefillin. You start with the shorosh, and this is
a change of
isn't this
physical alignment every morning.
Yeah.
Forget about everything with the tefillin.
Right. And that's it.
If it's something ailing you, right?
Even if what?
Something is ailing you. You put on tefillin, it could be better.
Yeah, and we see that tefillin brings cure. Something amazing. If you just look on this page, this is from the Rebbe's father, Reb Levi Yitzchak. He explains this whole Gemara according to Kabbalah. It's fascinating. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak. This was written in exile, using some herbs on the side of a page. So it's this page where the first word is shuv.
Shuv?
The top of the page says shuv.
Shuv, yeah.
Shuv. So we're going to look for, we're going to go further down. The line starts with v'zehu. It's before the second paragraph. It's 5. V'zehu. Yeah, v'zehu. So he says, what is the refuah? What is the cure l'dama dereisha, to blood that comes to the head? Move on. It's understood. Sha'ar refuah tzarech liyos al derech hanachas tefillin. He says that the cure must be through putting on tefillin. Why? Shat tefillin him b'chinas moichin shebereish, because tefillin is connected to the brain. We said that the problem the person had was in the brain, right? So what's the cure? Must be tefillin, right? Chanashuv. Tefillin nikraim pe'er. Tefillin are called beauty. It says one of the reasons, unfortunately, that someone who lost, like a parent, the first day he doesn't put on tefillin. Why? Because it's something beautiful. It says tefillin is the beauty that's on the person. If you take the letters pe'er, oisiyos, it's the same letters as rafa, which is refuah, healing. So tefillin, another name for tefillin is pe'er, which is also refuah. V'zehu shenimshach refuah. That's why putting on tefillin brings cure, brings healing. Like it says, Kol maniach tefillin, whoever puts on tefillin, marich yamim, he will live long. Shenemar, Hashem aleihem yichyu. It says, whoever has Hashem's name upon you will live for a long time. And it says, V'tachlimeni, you will cure me, v'hachyeni, and this will bring me life. B'menachos, basically, hariksiv sham v'tachlimeni d'hainu refuah. We see here that the words tachlimeni, which means you will strengthen me, which is the idea of refuah. So from here we see the power of tefillin. Tefillin brings cure. Tefillin brings arichas yamim, long life. So that's it. We should have a lot of refuah, a lot of strength. And
a lot of detail.
Yeah, but it's so amazing how you could learn the same Gemara, and it's like, what is this talking about? What are all these different herbs? What's this 300? And how you see how it relates to tefillah, the two shin.